Bang! The white tiger pinned the steel-quilled porcupine firmly into the snow, its sharp claws cutting through the dense quills, leaving gruesome wounds on its body. The white tiger, riddled with bloody holes, stood on the struggling porcupine's body and let out a fierce roar at the headless man with murderous intent nearby. It had reached its limit. Although Mo Fong was symbiotic with the white tiger, his body wasn't strong enough to unleash the white tiger's full power. Being able to bring down a Chuan-level mystery was already the limit of what he could achieve at this stage. The headless man was now completely intoxicated by the bloody aura from the white tiger. Wielding 2 beheading blades, he charged frantically towards it. Suddenly, a dark red shadow fell from the sky, precisely striking the headless man's spine, bombarding him into the snow like a cannonball. The battle-scarred white tiger, seeing this scene, was slightly stunned. Snow and dust swirled everywhere as a youth with 6 phantom wings on his back, holding a straight sword, suddenly sprang from the smoke. His feet dragged a long trail in the snow before slowly coming to a stop. "I thought I smelled a disgusting scent." Lu Baoyu glanced coldly at the white tiger. "So this is your true form." Wisps of hot air leaked from between the white tiger's teeth. It stared at Lu Baoyu for a moment before speaking in a deep voice. "Why are you here?" "I was nearby looking for mysteries for combat training when I heard the commotion and came to check." Lu Baoyu's gaze fell on the white tiger's wounds. "You look quite pathetic. Leave now while you still can," Mo Fong spoke through gritted teeth. "My blood has spread again. More mysteries will gather here soon. You won't survive. Run away." "Run?" Lu Baoyu sneered. "You're fighting here and now you want me to be a deserter?" Lu Baoyu gripped his straight sword and slowly walked towards the headless man with his 2 beheading blades, speaking calmly. "I, Lu Baoyu, am no deserter." Crack, 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 crack. An invisible divine void opened, and Lu Baoyu's straight sword suddenly split open into a grotesque giant mouth, frantically devouring the void of the blade's edge like a demon, as if it could chew everything into pieces. The 6 wings on his back trembled as he rushed towards the headless man. Seeing this, the white tiger Mo Fong frowned deeply. Just as he was about to say something more, his body shuddered slightly, and the massive white tiger form began to shrink, quickly returning to its previous small white cat appearance. His body could no longer maintain the white tiger state. He felt sore all over and couldn't muster any strength. He turned his head with difficulty to look into the distance, where several terrifying figures with tumultuous auras were rapidly approaching under the clouds on the horizon. Lu Baoyu. A graceful figure carrying a black box came running from afar. Li Jinjin, seeing Lu Baoyu fighting with the mystery and the injured white cat Mo Fong nearby, her eyes contracted slightly. She quickly ran to the gradually awakening porcupine's side, picked up the white cat Mo Fong, and grabbed at the void, materializing a heart-shaped bow and arrow in her hand. She aimed the arrowhead at the porcupine, her expression extremely grave. "What happened?" "I'll tell you later. Help me bandage these wounds first." The white cat Mo Fong lay in Li Jinjin's arms, looking at his wounds that were continuously emitting a fragrant scent. Li Jinjin didn't ask further questions and skillfully began bandaging him. In the distance, Lu Baoyu's figure moved swiftly around the headless man. As his palm touched the back of one beheading blade, it transformed into a grotesque blade demon and bit off one of the headless man's hands. However, even so, Lu Baoyu's speed was still somewhat lacking against the headless man. 2 consecutive slashes landed on Lu Baoyu, and though they didn't hit vital spots, they left deep wounds, blood flowing freely. After a bloody battle, Lu Baoyu finally managed to cut off the headless mystery's other arm and kicked him down the mountainside. Blood-covered, he staggered to Li Jinjin and Mo Fong's side, barely supporting himself with his straight sword, his single red eye gazing at the sky. Those terrifying figures in the distant sky rapidly approached, landing one after another around the forest, surrounding the 3 of them. Roars swept over them like waves. Chuan, Hai, Wuliang. Dozens of surging, powerful auras rippled through the air, making Li Jinjin and the others turn pale. "This is bad." The white cat Mo Fong watched as countless figures emerged from the forest, surrounding the 3 of them. His eyes filled with despair. "Now, we really can't escape." Lu Baoyu stared at those terrifying mysteries, silently gripping his sword handle, saying nothing. But his eye was filled with fighting spirit and madness. He was like a cornered beast. Even in death he would tear off a piece of the enemy's flesh. Where's Instructor Lin? Li Jinjin looked around. What? Instructor Lin? Li Jinjin frowned as she spoke. He messaged me saying not to bring Squad 006, that he would handle everything. I thought he was here. He's not. Mo Fong was about to say Instructor Lin wasn't here when he suddenly froze. Wait. If Instructor Lin wasn't here, how did he know to message Li Jinjin to come alone? It couldn't have been a scam message, right? The wind and snow howled, shaking the forest. Dozens of mysteries with terrifying power levels charged towards the central group of 3 amid earth-shattering roars. They were like a pack of greedy blood sharks. Just as Lu Baoyu was about to draw his sword and charge, a deep red figure appeared out of thin air in front of them. The cold wind carried snowflakes, dancing around the figure in the deep red cloak. He carried a black box on his back, standing silently in front of the 3, as if holding up an entire sky for them. His gaze swept calmly over the surrounding mysteries. Murderous intent burst forth from his eyes. You dare try to kill my soldiers? Bang! Without using spiritual power, Lin Chia kicked out violently, the terrifying force directly caving in the chest of the leading Chuan-level mystery, sending it falling like a meteor. The roaring mysteries didn't hesitate at all, still charging forward fearlessly. Then Lin Chia slowly raised his hand and pressed down on the void. Brilliant summoning arrays bloomed in the snow, and dozens of figures in deep green uniforms appeared out of nowhere, standing behind Lin Chia, all emanating high, or even Wuliang-level auras. Lin Chia waved his hand slightly and spoke expressionlessly. Kill them all. Boom. Dozens of orderlies shot out simultaneously, colliding with the incoming mysteries, and an earth-shattering mystery battle erupted. Lin Chia, wearing a cloak, quietly gazed at the battlefield. At this moment his demeanor was no longer that of a hospital director, but rather like a gang leader bringing his crew to a street fight. Instructor Lin. Lord Chia. Upon seeing his figure, Li Jinjin and Fong Mo's eyes lit up simultaneously as they excitedly called out. Lin Chia gave a slight nod, his gaze falling on Fong Mo's wound that was being bandaged. The bleeding had mostly subsided and with a bit more time it should stop completely. Lin Chia opened his mouth about to say something, when his gaze suddenly sharpened, and he swiftly grabbed the white cat Fong Mo, rapidly retreating backward. In the sky above the mountain, a pencil instantly pierced through kilometers of void at a speed impossible for the naked eye to capture, passing through where Fong Mo had been lying. Several seconds after the pencil's body had passed, a deafening sonic boom finally exploded in the air. If Lin Chia had been even slightly slower, Fong Mo would have become a shredded dead cat. The massive air wave created by the pencil's passage sent Li Jinjin and Lu Baoyu flying. Lin Chia held the white cat Fong Mo with one hand, his deep red cloak dancing wildly in the wind as his gaze fell upon the pencil hovering in the void above. That was... Smells good, want to eat so badly. Spine-chilling whispers came from beside the pencil as the pressure of a Klein boundary descended. Lin Chia's expression visibly grew serious. With his divine void and the aim no Murakumonotsurugi, the supreme divine weapon of Takamagara behind him, current Lin Chia could kill even Klein-level mysteries. But the problem was that Beijing's situation was now very special. He couldn't release any aura while fighting, or Qin Han's path to kingship would be completely ruined. Although there were Klein-level orderlies in the hospital he could use, his current boundary was only limitless, so he couldn't summon them and could only fight by himself. A few gleams flashed in Lin Chia's eyes as he raised his finger, and a brilliant magic circle opened beneath his feet. The next moment his form rapidly distorted, transforming into Qin Han wearing a military coat and leather boots. Transformation magic. Since he had to join the battle no matter what, Lin Chia had to completely conceal his own aura, and the best way was to replace it with Qin Han's own aura fluctuations. This way, even if he joined the battlefield, other mysteries wouldn't notice anything unusual. Even if they discovered 2 Qin Hans appearing at the same time, they would just think it was Qin Han's special ability, not realizing that one of them wasn't actually Qin Han. Lin Chia put down the white cat Fong Mo and reached into the black box behind him. Play. With the sound of a sword ring, Lin Chia gripped the aim no Murakumonotsurugi, facing off against the pencil spirit from afar. Divine Mental Hospital. Gilgamesh pushed open the door, squinting as he enjoyed the morning sun's bath in quite a good mood. Back in ancient Babylon, one of his greatest pleasures was to face the first ray of dawn, sitting on the highest and most magnificent throne in the entire kingdom, watching the busy citizens working below while enjoying intoxicating wine. Now, although there was no throne or wine, it was still nice to walk out to meet the first ray of dawn and have those orderlies busily prepare breakfast for him. His pleasant mood hadn't lasted long when a dull collision sound came from next door. Gilgamesh frowned and turned to look. At the doorway of the neighboring room, an ancient ape was sitting cross-legged on the railing, holding a jar of fruit wine in both hands and drinking deeply. Streams of liquid dripped along the fur around his mouth onto his cracked kasaya. He wiped the wine from the corner of his mouth, smacked his lips and threw the heavy wine jar onto the corridor floor. The wine jar rolled to Gilgamesh's feet. Gilgamesh's eyes narrowed. Bang! The wine jar at his feet instantly shattered. Sun Wukong, sitting on the railing, immediately frowned. He looked back at Gilgamesh and said coldly, "You're asking for death? You think you can?" Gilgamesh replied flatly. The orderlies busy downstairs heard the wine jar shatter on the second floor, were stunned for a moment, then looked at the time and showed expressions of realization. "Oh, it's time for those two to fight during work." The orderlies showed expressions of being long used to such scenes and continued with their own work. No one cared about what reason the two upstairs were fighting about today. Second floor. Gilgamesh and Sun Wukong's gazes collided in the air, seemingly about to spark. As the fighting spirit in their eyes grew more intense, just as Gilgamesh snorted coldly and prepared to make the first move, Sun Wukong seemed to think of something and raised a finger. "Wait a moment." Gilgamesh was stunned. "We're missing someone." Sun Wukong's gaze turned to the neighboring room. How troublesome." Gilgamesh spoke with displeasure. The two exchanged glances and walked together toward Bragi's room. Bang! With a huge sound, the door to room 3 was forcefully kicked open, and Bragi, who had been having a sweet dream in bed, suddenly woke up. Seeing Sun Wukong and Gilgamesh standing at the door, he was first stunned, then moved back in terror, stammering, What do you want? Don't touch me, don't." Before Bragi could finish speaking, Sun Wukong walked directly to his front, grabbed his collar and expressionlessly dragged him toward the door. "We need some background music for our fight," he said flatly. Bragi tried to resist, but Sun Wukong had cast some spell, and no matter how he struggled he couldn't break free from that monkey fur-covered hand. This handsome blonde from Norse mythology, wearing blue and white striped pajamas, was forcefully dragged by Sun Wukong from the second floor all the way to the yard's edge like a helpless chick, attracting many orderlies to gather and watch during the process. For a moment, Bragi felt he had completely lost face for all the Norse gods. With the musician in position, Sun Wukong and Gilgamesh stood on opposite sides of the yard, and after a brief pause they rushed toward each other. The intense battle between two gods thus erupted. The urgent sound of the harp echoed through the courtyard like a thunderstorm. Bragi, wearing a nightcap and pajamas with drooping eyelids, played like an emotionless music machine. As his fingers rapidly plucked the strings, the battle in the courtyard grew more intense. The violent auras collided and swept through the courtyard. The two figures moved at speeds impossible for the naked eye to follow, first engaging in close combat with fists, then gradually evolving into an intense clash between staff and sword. Clay! With a tremendous sound, surging divine power roared out from between the two, but was blocked by the giant magic array surrounding the courtyard, not letting even a trace escape. The caregivers seemed completely unconcerned about their safety, serving breakfast while occasionally stopping to watch from the courtyard's edge. Li Yifei even started taking bets on today's winner. "I think Monkey King will win again today." "Not necessarily. Monkey King has won 2 days in a row. I think Gilgamesh will have a slight edge today. From the perspective of probability theory's binomial distribution, if we assume Monkey King wins today, as event A, then I bet on Gilgamesh. 2 cilantro stems." "Cilantro? Even dogs won't eat that." While the caregivers were placing their bets, the battle in the courtyard had reached its climax. Boom! In an instant, sword and staff collided hundreds of times in mid-air, sonic booms resonating as the ground beneath their feet suddenly sank. Sun Wukong's golden eyes burst with dazzling light as he raised his golden cudgel high, swinging it down toward Gilgamesh's head. Gilgamesh's eyes narrowed, choosing not to meet Sun Wukong's force head-on. Purple energy surged around him as he moved to block the golden cudgel while precisely thrusting his sword toward Sun Wukong's throat. At that moment, Sun Wukong's body trembled, the golden light burning in his pupils suddenly pausing for an instant. His golden cudgel froze in midair. This extremely brief pause allowed Gilgamesh's sword to seize the initiative, the blade thrusting toward Sun Wukong's throat, stopping just as it was about to pierce his skin. Sun Wukong's golden cudgel was less than 2 fingers width from Gilgamesh's head, but Gilgamesh's sword was already at Sun Wukong's throat. The two remained frozen in midair as silence fell over the scene. In this battle Gilgamesh had won. Outside the courtyard, the caregivers who had bet on Gilgamesh erupted in jubilant cheers. The urgent, intense battle music suddenly stopped. The previously drowsy Bragi let out a slight sound, holding his harp as he looked toward the two in the courtyard, his brows slightly furrowed. In the courtyard, Gilgamesh held his sword at Sun Wukong's throat, paused for a moment, then his eyes exploded with unprecedented fury. "What do you mean by this?" Gilgamesh spoke in a low voice. "You don't really think I need you to let me win? Are you insulting the king?" An incredible kingly aura burst from Gilgamesh's body, his divine power flowing out completely unrestrainedly like a rushing river, making the magic array's light covering the courtyard shake violently. The previously cheering caregivers, feeling the terrifying aura emanating from Gilgamesh, trembled and fell silent simultaneously. Gilgamesh was truly angry. Cough cough. "Well, let's talk this through." Seeing the situation turning dire, Bragi hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth, putting down his harp and quickly running into the courtyard, positioning himself between Gilgamesh and Sun Wukong. He carefully pushed away Gilgamesh's sword blade from Sun Wukong's throat with his finger, finally breathing a slight sigh of relief. "I think the monkey didn't mean it, right?" Bragi turned to look at Sun Wukong, blinking at him. Gilgamesh ignored Bragi standing between them, his furious eyes still fixed on Sun Wukong, as if ready to tear him to pieces at the slightest provocative word. Sun Wukong lowered his head slightly, looking at his cracked Kasaya, his eyes narrowing. "Something's wrong with my body," he said hoarsely. "Stay away from me for a while, give me some time." Hearing this inexplicable response, Gilgamesh frowned, seemingly about to say something more, but Bragi pulled him toward the edge of the courtyard. In the courtyard, Sun Wukong stood alone on the ravaged ground, looking down at his Kasaya, his fists tightly clenched, veins bulging violently. He took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. He stood there motionless like a stone statue. Among those present, only Gilgamesh and Bragi could sense the incredibly violent divine power rapidly compressing within his body. After an unknown time, Sun Wukong suddenly opened his eyes. Rip. With a crisp sound, a corner of his cracked Kasaya suddenly tore. The vermilion corner of the Kasaya floated down from Sun Wukong's body like a dancing flame, dissolving into nothingness in the air. In this instant, Sun Wukong's eyes burst with amazing spirit, as if some shackle had been broken. The tattered Kasaya fluttered around him as a powerful, domineering wave of divine power surged outward. Seeing this, Gilgamesh raised his eyebrows in surprise. His aura has grown stronger again? "They're both monsters," Bragi couldn't help but sigh. "Both of you are monsters." If Lin Chia were here, he would see the treatment progress bar above Sun Wukong's head suddenly move forward one notch. Sun Wukong treatment progress. 51%. Reward extraction conditions met. Beginning random extraction of Sun Wukong's divine power abilities. Beijing Wild Mountain. Clay. A pencil whistled through the void, its tip colliding with the side of the sword of Kusanagi, producing a resonating sound. Lin Chia, transformed into Qin Han, quickly twisted his wrist, cutting the pencil tip with the sword edge. The incredibly hard pencil body was as fragile as tofu before the sword of Kusanagi, instantly slicing off a thin wooden strip. A piercing shriek came from the void around the pencil, and streams of blood actually flowed from the pencil's body. Before Lin Chia could act, the pencil violently shook and instantly flashed hundreds of meters away. Lin Chia, holding the sword of Kusanagi, stepped back half a step, his right hand gripping the sword handle feeling numb, with traces of blood visible at his tiger's mouth. Using the sword of Kusunagi's properties, he could indeed harm the pencil spirit, but that was the extent of it. Red Yen. Here. The red-haired girl in dark green nursing uniform smashed a mystery being with her claw. Her wings extended from her back as she landed beside Lin Chia, responding respectfully. Take these three away first, leave them at Squad 006's dormitory entrance, Lin Chia said calmly while staring at the floating pencil. Also, stay away from someone wearing a military coat. If he stops you, tell him you're my person. Yes. Red Yan's form rapidly expanded, transforming into a massive flame-veined earth dragon in the blink of an eye. Crouching on the ground, the windstorm from her wings sent all the lower-level mysteries flying. Li Jinjin took the white cat Fong Imo and quickly jumped onto the dragon's back. Lu Baoyu wiped the blood from his mouth corner, holding his knife while standing still, his eyes fixed on the battling mysteries in the distance, showing no intention of leaving. Why aren't you leaving? Lin Chia asked with furrowed brows. Lu Baoyu won't be. Bang. Before Lu Baoyu could finish, Lin Chia kicked him hard in the chest, sending him flying onto the earth dragon's back. You're getting bolder, daring to disobey your instructor's orders. Take them away. Lin Chia said expressionlessly. Red Yan's wings flapped once, carrying the three recruits skyward, disappearing into the horizon within moments. Lin Chia gripped his sword and turned to look at the hesitant floating pencil. After being wounded by the sword, the pencil spirit became wary of Lin Chia's blade, deliberately keeping its distance, not daring to approach. Seeing Lu Baoyu and the others leave, Lin Chia was about to depart without further engaging the pencil spirit when he suddenly noticed something and made a slight sound of surprise. Monkey King's healing progress has exceeded 50? Although Lin Chia wasn't physically in the Divine Mental Hospital, he could sense some changes within. The moment Sun Wukong tore off a corner of his kasaya and his healing progress exceeded 50%, he received the message. After pondering for a moment, while maintaining his sword standoff with the pencil spirit, Lin Chia partially immersed his consciousness into the Divine Mental Hospital. Beginning random selection of Sun Wukong's divine power abilities. As soon as he entered the Divine Mental Hospital, a spinning wheel appeared before Lin Chia's eyes. With a thought, the wheel began to rotate automatically. After 3 previous ability selections, Lin Chia had basically grasped the patterns and differences between the 1%, 50%, and 100% stage reward selections. If the 0% ability selection was truly random, then this 50% ability selection guaranteed a core divine domain ability. For example, Nyx's Ultimate Dark Divine Domain, Dark Erosion, Merlin's Phantom Magic Divine Domain, Transformation Magic, Eden's Life Divine Domain, the Eternal Secret Garden. Lin Chia had been looking forward to Sun Wukong's divine power abilities for a long time. He was curious about what kind of divine power abilities the legendary Great Sage equal to Heaven, now the victorious fighting Buddha Sun Wukong, would possess. Would it be Demon Monkey Chaos or Buddha Light Illumination? Under Lin Chia's expectant gaze, the spinning wheel in the air gradually stopped, with the pointer landing on one section. Lin Chia froze in place. This is. On another side of Beijing. Under the dim streetlights, a black warhorse wreathed in flames slowly advanced on iron hooves. On the horse's back, a figure in a military coat held a bloodied straight sword in one hand and the head of a mannequin mystery in the other, his dark eyes calmly scanning the surroundings. The low-level mysteries, hiding on both sides of the road, were restless, seeming wary, confused, and probing. They weren't sure who this man was. Was he as strong as the previous man? Was he also limitless? Was he also a monster? Killing one Klein didn't mean much, as there were at least 5 or 6 mysteries of this level in Beijing. But under the previous man's intimidation, even these Kleins didn't dare to make any moves, because they knew clearly that even if they joined forces, they were no match for that man. That man called Xiaopinga was an absolute monster. He had intimidated the Kleins, and naturally those below them, the infinite, sea-level and even lower-level mysteries, didn't dare to move at all. But now that man's presence had disappeared. Could this man in the military coat suppress those Klein-level mysteries? If he could, then these numerous low-level mysteries naturally wouldn't dare to move. But if he showed any weakness, these mysteries, seeing hope for freedom, would immediately attack en masse, throwing all of Beijing into chaos. Mysteries possessed intelligence and could assess situations, judging which circumstances were advantageous and which were too risky to challenge. Qin Han rode his horse along the empty street, his expression appearing calm and leisurely, as if taking a stroll in his own backyard, completely ignoring the low-level mysteries lurking in the shadows. He knew clearly that the intimidation Xiaoping spoke of had already begun imperceptibly. Now his every move, every battle, would affect the behavior of the mysteries in this city. He had to prove himself through strength and killing. Screech. A street light at the corner suddenly flickered, and in its projected light, the shadow of a man holding a black hat in one hand mysteriously appeared out of nowhere. He stood there silently, like a projection existing in a two-dimensional world without height or thickness. He slightly turned his head to look at Qin Han approaching on horseback. He stepped onto the middle of the road on Qin Han's inevitable path, and lowered his head to put on the hat. The Klein-level boundary fluctuation emanated without any concealment. This was both a provocation and a test. Qin Han rode to the broad intersection and stopped, his eyes fixed on the shadow ahead, murderous intent flickering in his pupils. Just then a gust of dark wind swept through and Qin Han frowned, turning his head to look at the road behind him. In the middle of the road he had just passed, there now stood a roly-poly toy over 2 meters tall. On the surface of this roly-poly was painted a handsome man's portrait, covered in stains and scratches, like a mural weathered by time on a stone wall, somewhat blurry. The roly-poly swayed silently under the streetlight, its painted handsome face staring fixedly at Qin Han, with a terrifyingly sinister smile. 2 Klein boundary mysteries. Qin Han slowly shifted his gaze from that eerie tumbler, his expression remaining calm. However, at this moment his mood had become very serious. The Klein boundary mysteries in Beijing should all be rushing towards his location now. That shadow under the streetlight and that strange tumbler had both appeared proactively. They were rebels wanting to overthrow the city's order. To establish his authority, he must step over the corpses of these 2 mysteries. Qin Han took a deep breath, a glint flashing in his eyes as his warhorse beneath him suddenly galloped forward, carrying him towards the shadow ahead on the street. He held his sword with one hand, riding through the snow with killing intent blazing in his eyes. The moment he moved, the 2 Klein boundary mysteries, blocking his front and rear, moved simultaneously. The shadow under the streetlight gently raised its palm, and an invisible wave of energy rolled forth. Wherever this wave swept through, whether it was towering streetlights or 100-meter-tall buildings, they were forcibly compressed into the ground, becoming two-dimensional flat matter. Qin Han's eyes narrowed as he quickly leaped from his warhorse, dodging the invisible wave. Meanwhile, his right hand lightly swung his sword, and 2 powerful flames of life force simultaneously appeared above the shadow and the tumbler, flickering violently. Just as Qin Han was about to strike with his sword, in his peripheral vision, another life force flame appeared, no weaker than those of the shadow and tumbler, and this flame appeared in the void right beside him. A 3rd Klein boundary mystery. On top of a tall building, Xiaoping's eyelashes trembled in the snow where he lay sleeping, and he gently opened one eye. Snowflakes fell from his body onto the ground as Xiaoping looked in Qin Han's direction, his expression extremely grave. 3 of them went at once? This is troublesome. Xiaoping knew very well that although Qin Han was the Fengdu Emperor's proxy, he was still just a newcomer who had recently entered the Klein boundary. His strength would definitely have a considerable gap compared to veteran powerhouses like himself who had 1 foot in humanity's ceiling level. Just because Xiaoping could easily suppress all Klein entities didn't mean Qin Han could do the same easily. Before facing these 3 Klein entities, Qin Han had already killed a Klein boundary mannequin and was somewhat depleted. Now facing attacks from 3 figures simultaneously, his situation had become dangerous. Xiaoping had no doubt that in a life-or-death battle, Qin Han could kill these 3 Klein entities, but the current situation wasn't that simple. These 3 mysteries currently engaging Qin Han were all highly aggressive and bold mysteries. They dared to risk death to provoke Qin Han and test his strength. But at the same time, there were 2 or 3 more Klein entities quietly observing from the shadows, their behavior more cautious. If Qin Han truly displayed overwhelming combat power and killed these 3 mysteries, that had actively emerged, then those watching from the sidelines could survive by not having engaged. But if Qin Han showed weakness, then all 6 mysteries would swarm him at once, and the situation would become completely irreversible. In this battle, Qin Han not only couldn't lose, but he had to maintain the upper hand. The difficulty was too high for him. Xiaopinga gazed at the distant battlefield and heaved a long sigh, already prepared to intervene. God's mental hospital. Lin Chia looked at the floating panel before him, deep in thought. Celestial demon form, battle deity void. The soul leaves the physical body and absorbs wandering spiritual energy from heaven and earth, manifesting a demon form. The form's existence is not limited by physical realm bottlenecks. The more spiritual energy absorbed, the stronger the form's combat power, but if the form absorbs power beyond what the soul can withstand, both spirit and soul will be destroyed. While manifesting the demon form, the physical body is defenseless. If the body is damaged, the form will be interrupted. Demon form. What exactly is that? As expected of a great Xia deity's divine ability, just from the description, Lin Chia could see how different it was from Nyx, Merlin and Bragi, though similarly, the vague description left him somewhat confused. So, this is an ability similar to astral projection, then transforming into a demon to fight. Should be like becoming some kind of powerful mystery? Lin Chia lightly touched the panel with his fingertip, and a white light flowed into his body and vanished. Vaguely he felt his soul undergo some changes. Lin Chia pondered while accepting the ability. Judging from this celestial demon form alone, demonifying the soul seemed to have no connection to Buddhism. It could even be said to go against it. Then the one wearing Kasaya in the God's mental hospital now, should he be considered the victorious fighting Buddha, or the Monkey King wearing the fighting Buddha's appearance? Lin Chia believed it was the latter. In a sense, divine abilities were another kind of mental projection. In Sun Wukong's heart he was still that defiant demon king of heaven and earth, not a Buddhist great being who saved all living creatures. After accepting celestial demon form, Lin Chia's gaze returned to the planchette confronting him. The pencil floated in the air, seemingly trying hard to heal the wound that had been cut, but under the properties of the Aim no Murakumo sword, no matter how hard it tried, there was no effect. Blood continuously seeped out, dyeing the entire pencil shaft red. It tried to attack Lin Chia several times but hesitated and stopped mid-air. This mystery didn't seem very brave. Even though it had the advantage in realm, it didn't dare to casually attack Lin Chia, who held the Aim no Murakumo sword, just hovering in the sky. Boom! Several explosive thunders came from the distant street. Lin Chia was startled and quickly extended his spiritual sense. On the main road filled with mysteries, Qin Han in his military coat was frantically defending against the joint attack of 3 Klein boundary mysteries. Although from his sharp moves and calm expression, the battle seemed effortless, Lin Chia could clearly sense that his right hand holding the sword was already trembling uncontrollably. This can't go on, Lin Chia frowned deeply. If this continued, those Klein entities observing from the shadows would also join in, and then things would become troublesome. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, Lin Chia looked down at his palm, and a bold idea came to his mind. Demonification. Lin Chia muttered to himself, then turned to look at the attendants beside him. Black Pupil, come control my physical body. Black Pupil was slightly stunned, seemingly not understanding why Lin Chia gave such an order, but still transformed into a black shadow and quickly attached to Lin Chia's body. In his brow, a crimson-black pupil quietly opened. Lin Chia slowly closed his eyes. White snow drifted down from the sky. Lin Chia's eyes were tightly shut, with a crimson eye on his brow glowing like bewitching red flames, flickering in the dim forest. A moment later, Lin Chia's body trembled. A blurry shadow emerged from his body, quietly standing beside his physical form wrapped in a deep red cloak, looking around. Lin Chia looked at his own face so close by, feeling somewhat curious. It was his first time examining himself in this way and his first time walking out of his body in soul form. So this is what it feels like when the primordial spirit leaves the body. He glanced in Qin Han's direction and muttered, "Time to begin." The shadow Lin Chia spread his arms, took a deep breath, and began to activate the Qitian divine form within his body. In an instant the weather changed dramatically. Beijing Sihiyuan Courtyard. A giant dragon flew to the courtyard and slowly descended. Li Jinjin held the white cat Fang Yimo with one hand while dragging the resentful Lu Baoyu with the other as they jumped down from the dragon's back. Jinjin. Zhang Jingting, leading several members of Squad 006, walked out of the courtyard and froze at this sight. Uncle Zhang, quickly take them for treatment. Li Jinjin hurriedly dragged the two into the house. The members of Squad 006 followed closely behind. And Qingyu sat at a stone table in the courtyard's corridor, quietly watching this scene. He suddenly made a curious sound, raised his eyebrows and looked toward the sky. What's wrong? Chao Yuan sat down beside him with a plate of fruits. Doesn't the sky seem to be changing rather quickly? Chao Yuan followed Qingyu's gaze toward the sky. It was morning, and although thick snow clouds had gathered above Beijing, it was still generally bright. But suddenly, a fierce demonic wind swept through, stirring the heavy snow clouds like paste. The sky visibly darkened and faint thunder rumbled from above the snow clouds. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Large amounts of accumulated snow fell from the bare tree branches around the courtyard, while sand and stones were swept up into the sky by the demonic wind. Atop a tall building, the snowflakes pressing down on Xiaopinga's body danced wildly in the demonic wind. He opened one eye to look toward a certain direction in Beijing, his pupils flickering with surprise and doubt. Such a powerful aura. Another mystery has descended? At this time of all moments. His expression was extremely grim. Beijing Nightwatch headquarters. Suiqing held a cup of hot tea, standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the high-rise, looking at the churning snow clouds in the distance with slightly furrowed brows. So it still failed. Suiqing let out a long sigh. Qin Han was personally transferred from Anta County by him, and was the most suitable candidate among the younger generation of Nightwatchers in all of Great Xia to take over Beijing. Although letting Qin Han try to take over Beijing was somewhat risky, Great Xia no longer had much time. Xiaopinga's abilities were indispensable for the front lines. Therefore he wanted Qin Han to try no matter what. If successful, everything would be perfect. If it failed, the city still had Xiaopinga and himself, Suiqing. Whatever turmoil might occur, they could suppress it all within 1 minute without harm to civilians. They had room for trial and error. Jiang Zia, who was sitting on the sofa in the office enjoying tea, seemed to notice something and turned his head toward the center of the snow cloud vortex. What's wrong? Suiqing turned and asked. Nothing. Jiang Zia smiled slightly, stroking his white beard, and said, just sense the aura of an old acquaintance. An acquaintance? From the heavenly court. Suiqing asked, puzzled. Currently in Great Xia there should only be a few Great Xia gods stationed. In Beijing besides you there shouldn't be anyone else, right? They're both an old acquaintance and a newcomer. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. Jiang Zia shook his head and said mysteriously. However, since they have appeared, things might take a turn. Let this old man lend them a helping hand. Jiang Zia slowly raised a finger, pointing toward the distant snow cloud vortex. Snow clouds swirled, demonic winds raged. Snowflakes flew up from the rustling forest into the sky, and a blurry figure floated like down feathers, flying vertically toward the snow cloud vortex, its form rapidly expanding. Lin Chia could clearly sense a mysterious energy being frantically absorbed into his body from the surrounding environment. The more this energy accumulated, the stronger the force surging within him became. Is this spiritual energy? Lin Chia carefully sensed for a moment and discovered that this so-called spiritual energy seemed to be a more diluted form of divine power. This divine power was different from what Lin Chia had felt in Takamagara. It seemed more fluid, and this unique divine power gave Lin Chia an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if he had encountered it somewhere before. The heavenly court. The source of this form of divine power was almost identical to the ethereal energy Lin Chia had seen in the heavenly court, except that the spiritual energy, now present in the environment, was far less concentrated than in the heavenly court. Was this a special divine power created from the heavenly court's origin, exclusive to Great Xia? As Lin Chia pondered, the thin spiritual energy around him suddenly began to surge violently, as if someone had deliberately compressed all the spiritual energy around the entire city into his vicinity. If Lin Chia's previous rate of absorbing spiritual energy was like drinking water through a straw, now it was like being thrown into a swimming pool, frantically gulping water. Lin Chia was startled. He didn't know what had happened, only that his soul was expanding frantically, his aura strength directly surpassing his physical body's realm, reaching a completely new level. Among the rolling demonic winds, a giant foot suddenly dropped from the sky, making the entire earth resonate with a rumbling sound. Then the outline of a black humanoid giant shadow was drawn out in the snow clouds. When it completely emerged from the drifting snow, everyone could see its appearance clearly. It was a demon ape hundreds of meters tall. Rolling demonic energy danced like flames on its skin surface, weaving into strands of ape fur that swayed gently. A pair of golden eyes full of rage and frenzy burned like two suns in the sky. It stood with its feet on the ground, like a small mountain emanating terrifying energy, towering in the center of the city. It was a giant mystery, or rather it was a demon. A demon at the Klein realm. That was the Chitian divine form, that Lin Chia had condensed. What is that thing? In the quadrangle courtyard, Zhang Jingting and others couldn't help but speak up when they saw the giant demon ape in the distance, shrouded in demonic aura. They had become night watchers at different times, but even Yuan Gang, who had the most seniority among those present, was seeing this kind of peculiar mystery for the first time. This peculiarity wasn't due to its appearance. After all, having been night watchers for so many years, what strange-looking mysteries hadn't they seen? What they truly couldn't understand was the aura emanating from that mystery. This aura gave them a very dangerous feeling. In the distant city, the demon ape transformed into a terrifying mass of demonic energy, seemingly without physical form, moving swiftly between the high-rise buildings. Lin Chia, while controlling the demonic energy that he had transformed into, carefully sensed the changes after becoming the incarnated phantom. This phantom, evolved from his own soul, could freely switch between physical and soul forms. The currently fluctuating demonic energy was an application of the soul form. Lin Chia vaguely remembered that in Great Xia mythology, there was a special technique called matching heaven and earth, and in stories familiar to the public, the most representative figures who possessed this ability were the great sage Sun Wukong and Yang Jian, the Erlang god. If using their positions as a dividing line, then Sun Wukong's phantom would belong to the demonic phantom category, while Erlang god's phantom would be a divine phantom. The matching heaven phantom he drew from Sun Wukong should be the demonic lineages, matching heaven and earth. When Lin Chia performed his soul projection and absorbed spiritual energy, he had already sensed that he could control the form of his demonic phantom. In other words, matching heaven phantom was essentially an ability to condense a unique demonic phantom belonging to oneself. Lin Chia initially wanted to make this matching heaven phantom take a form similar to his own, but on second thought, what he needed now was a body that closely resembled a mystery. If his incarnated phantom was human, it seemed to lack some intimidation factor which would hinder what he planned to do next. Therefore, this time Lin Chia's condensed demonic phantom directly defaulted to Sun Wukong's original phantom appearance. Facts proved that the demon ape's appearance, combined with the rolling demonic energy, had quite impressive intimidation power. Seeing a Klein-level fierce demon ape descending from the sky, the pen spirit who was confronting Lin Chia's physical body immediately chose to pierce through the void and quickly retreat to the distance. Although they were all mysteries, this didn't mean they could coexist harmoniously. In fact, most mysteries were hostile to each other, and the best mode of getting along was simply not interfering with each other. Just like various beasts surviving in the jungle, although they were all animals, they would still fight and compete for territory. The pen spirit was not particularly brave to begin with, and now seeing such a fierce and terrifying mystery descend, coupled with the intimidation of the Amano-Murakumo sword, it chose to retreat immediately. But Lin Chia in his demon form couldn't possibly let it leave just like that. He also needed to establish his authority. The pencil transformed into a beam of light, quickly disappearing into the forest, but before it could fly far, the rolling demonic energy surged like waves around it, completely blocking all its escape routes. The demonic energy raged wildly, and amid the fierce winds, a demon ape's giant shadow slowly condensed. Those golden eyes stared fixedly at the pen spirit, an invisible pressure weighing down on its head, making the voice lingering around the pencil shaft grow weak. Seemingly feeling this wasn't enough to highlight his ferocious nature, Lin Chia pondered for a moment, suddenly recalling Chao Yuan's Black King transformation behavior, and unconsciously opened the demon ape's mouth in a fierce grin. Hee. The pen spirit was greatly startled. Around it, that faint murmuring sound tremblingly rose again. Pen spirit, you are my past life, I am your present life. If you hear my prayer, please appear. As the words fell in the space wrapped by demonic energy, a cold evil wind suddenly arose, and a woman wearing a blood-stained white dress mysteriously appeared beside the pencil. Her right hand tightly gripped the pencil shaft, her black hair obscuring her entire face, making it impossible to see her features. An eerie and mysterious aura swept out. She gripped the pencil shaft, and after the gaze under her messy black hair observed the towering demon ape for a moment, she flew out like lightning. That vermilion pencil shaft, like a lethal short blade, stabbed toward the demon ape's throat at an alarming speed. Seeing this, demon ape Lin Chia's golden eyes narrowed slightly, slowly raising his mountain-like arm, carrying terrible demonic energy, and smashed down heavily. The pencil shaft and the demon ape's fist collided without any fancy moves. Boom. In this pure clash of power, the pen spirit only held on for a moment before being smashed to the ground by the demon ape's fist. Although this demonic phantom condensed by Lin Chia was far from the great sage's true phantom at the same level, his power was not something a mortal mystery like the pen spirit could withstand. Even without other abilities, just the phantom's terrible power and fierce physical body were enough to deserve the title of demon. In the crater in the ground, the blood-stained white dress staggered to stand up, and just as it was about to make a move, the towering demon ape stood before her, the demonic energy violently churning as 4 more arms grew from its body. Hee. The demon ape grinned down at the pen spirit in the crater, suddenly raising all 6 thick arms and smashing down like a storm. Under this unreasonable physical bombardment, the earth shook, and the ground throughout the entire block quickly cracked open. The pen spirit's figure was almost embedded into the ground. Cracks began to spread across the pencil shaft. Boom. With the final punch falling, the earth rumbled with a shock. With a crisp, explosive sound, the vermilion pencil shaft broke apart from the middle, and the figure in the blood-stained white dress also shattered piece by piece, dissipating into the air. The demon ape's body stopped attacking, the 4 extra-grown arms dissolved into demonic energy and disappeared. It bent down slightly, picked up the broken pencil from the ground crack like picking up a toy, straightened its back and stood tall under the rolling snow clouds. The hot breath from its nostrils melted large patches of falling snow. That fierce head turned slightly, looking toward the battlefield where Qin Han was fighting with 3 mysteries. It gripped the pen spirit's corpse and walked step by step through the flying snow. The 3 mysteries battling Qin Han simultaneously stopped when they sensed this new terrifying presence, turning to look at the demon ape in astonishment. The shadow man under the streetlight slightly raised the corner of his mouth, lowered his head to put on his hat, wearing an expression ready to watch the show. It's worth noting that now that Xiaopinga is gone, the order in Beijing has come to a halt. After this brand new Klein-level mystery descends, it surely won't be like its predecessors who were dragged into dreams for education, and then obediently followed the rules here to intimidate the lower-ranked mysteries. It's like an extremely aggressive outsider. Its appearance will inevitably turn Beijing upside down and occupy a large portion of Qin Han's attention. At this moment in the hearts of the 3 mysteries, that demon ape had become a reckless vanguard charging ahead. And in Qin Han's eyes flashed a glimpse of despair. Fighting 3 Kleins alone while having to maintain a strong front had already pushed him to his limits. Now with such a fierce Klein descending, he was instantly pushed to the edge of no return. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The scepter of authority over Beijing, passed down from Xiaopinga. He ultimately failed to catch it. He was still too young after all. It had only been 2 years since he became the Fengdu Emperor's proxy. Being able to grow to this level in such a short time already qualified him as an unparalleled genius. If given another year, replacing Xiaopinga as Beijing's captain and suppressing numerous mysteries wouldn't have been difficult. But reality didn't give him that much time. Qin Han stood in the snow, staring intently at the charging silhouette of the demon ape, his right hand gripping the straight sword ever tighter. He took a deep breath, slowly exhaled, and determination flashed in his eyes. Since things had come to this point and he had nowhere to retreat, even if he couldn't become Beijing's captain, he at least needed to clean up this mess he had created. In the snow, Qin Han, wearing his military coat, charged toward the demon ape's silhouette with his sword. Seeing Qin Han charging straight at itself, the demon ape narrowed its golden eyes. It carelessly tossed aside the corpse of Planchette like garbage, raised its thick right arm, and violently swung at the rapidly approaching Qin Han. A fierce roar erupted from its throat, and in an instant the wind and clouds churned with unmatched momentum. The three mysteries watching from the side secretly rejoiced at such a display. By the looks of it, even if this demon ape couldn't kill Qin Han, it should at least be able to drain some of his strength. Then when the three of them joined forces to attack, they could completely break free from this Beijing prison and regain their freedom. In Qin Han's eyes, murderous intent flickered coldly. Bang! The straight sword and the demon ape's fist collided heavily, sending howling fierce winds in all directions that shattered half the snowflakes in the air. After the brief collision, the demon ape's massive body seemed to be wounded by Qin Han's sword light. Its body shuddered and its thick right arm deviated from its original trajectory, smashing toward the other side of the street. There, the tumbler mystery, who had been secretly rejoicing while watching the battle, suddenly froze. Boom! The demon ape's fist, deflected by Qin Han's sword, coincidentally smashed into the area where the tumbler was. With a thunderous crash, dust billowed out. The ground cracked, and the tumbler's body was punched into the ground like an art piece embedded in concrete. The smile on the painted man's face on the tumbler's surface became somewhat stiff. Tumbler. The demon ape slowly lifted its fist from the ground. Its golden eyes coldly glanced at the tumbler mystery, once before carelessly looking away. But in that instant the tumbler mystery suddenly felt it understood the meaning contained in that look. It said, "Sorry about that accidental damage, we'll be more careful next time." The tumbler lay bewildered on the ground, with indescribable grievance and confusion in the painted man's eyes. On the other side, the culprit Qin Han looked at the sword in his hand, then at the huge demon ape before him, confusion appearing in his eyes. What's going on? When he first crossed blades with the demon ape, he indeed sensed the terrifying power within it, but the next moment, that power was suddenly deliberately contained, then took a strange angle and punched the tumbler mystery. The key point was he hadn't even swung his sword in that direction. Was it coincidence? Perhaps this demon ape wasn't as strong as imagined? Qin Han had no time to think further, as the demon ape had already let out an enraged roar and raised its right foot like a mountain to crush down on his head. As the churning demonic energy rapidly approached, Qin Han gritted his teeth, his form instantly flashing away, darting past the demon ape's feet, leaping up with his straight sword precisely slashing toward the demon ape's back. But before the blade could touch its target, the demon ape acted as if already wounded, letting out a miserable shriek, its massive body losing balance and falling headfirst toward the ground. On the ground, the tumbler, who had just managed to crawl out of the punch crater, was dumbfounded. Boom! Another tremendous crash, and the tumbler, along with the ground beneath, was directly headbutted by the demon ape into a deep pit. The earth shook as billowing smoke rose up. In the sunken ground, the tumbler, headbutted into the deep pit by the demon ape, felt rage burning in its heart. Its form transformed into a beam of rainbow light, directly charging at the demon ape's nearby head. The demon ape raised an eyebrow, a smile appearing in its golden eyes. "So you struck first?" Watching that rainbow light shoot toward itself, the demon ape suddenly opened its ferocious mouth, terrible demonic energy surging forth as it firmly bit down on the incoming tumbler with its fangs. No matter how hard it struggled, the tumbler couldn't break free at all. The over 2-meter-tall tumbler mystery was now about the size of a candy in the demon ape's mouth. The demon ape slowly climbed out of the deep pit, the tumbler's body clenched in its teeth. After a low growl, it viciously chewed it to pieces. Crunch, crunch. Under the demon ape's perverted strength and sharp fangs, the tumbler's body was forcefully crushed into fragments, then wrapped in large amounts of demonic energy and casually spat out by the demon ape onto the street. Like spitting out an annoying piece of gum. The two remaining mysteries were stunned. "How did your fight end up killing a bystander mystery?" Qin Han stood completely frozen, his face full of disbelief. He knew his sword hadn't even touched the demon ape. As he hesitated whether to strike at the demon ape again, it let out another roar and charged straight at him, its feet causing slight tremors in the ground, its face fierce, its momentum unmatched. Chin Han instinctively jumped up, swinging his sword at the incoming fist's wind, but at the critical moment, the demon ape's body made an almost imperceptible shift, causing his blade to pass by the fist's edge and stab directly into the demon ape's heart. The demon ape's body suddenly froze in midair. Chin Han. Wisps of demonic energy drifted out from the demon ape's body as it began to dissolve into nothingness in midair. As the demon ape's body gradually faded away, its head looked down at the wound in its chest, then at the straight blade in Chin Han's hand. Its golden eyes blazed with unprecedented resentment and fury. It suddenly opened its mouth and roared violently, but with its vocal cords dissipating, not a single sound emerged. Snow drifted down as the demon ape dissolved, its silent roar. Its body had completely disappeared, and the remaining half of its head lunged angrily at Chin Han with its teeth, but before they could touch Chin Han's body, it dissolved into nothingness, completely vanishing. Snowflakes danced in the howling wind, as if echoing the demon ape's unwilling roar. For some reason, all the mysteries who witnessed this scene suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of desolation and tragedy. The slight doubts that arose when they saw the demon ape crush the tumbler completely disappeared with the scene of the demon ape's unwilling dissolution. The demon ape had tried its best. Until the very last moment, it was still desperately trying to kill Chin Han, but unfortunately, Chin Han's strength seemed far above its own. How strong was he really? In the nearby streets, all the high-level and low-level mysteries who witnessed this scene looked at Chin Han differently, with fear appearing in the depths of their eyes. Chin Han stood rigidly holding his blade like a statue. He didn't understand. Everything that had just happened was beyond his comprehension, to the point where he still hadn't recovered from the illusion of killing the demon ape with his own hands. Had he killed the demon ape? It seemed he had yet hadn't. However, the good news was that after the demon ape mistakenly killed the tumbler, the number of Kleins jointly attacking him had decreased from 3 to 2. Things seemed to be getting back on track. The demon ape's appearance had mysteriously boosted his prestige. If he could kill these 2 remaining Kleins, his intimidation would basically be complete. Chin Han took a deep breath, gripped his blade and calmly swept his gaze toward the 2 distant Kleins. They immediately trembled in fear. Wild Mountain. Lin Chia's physical body stood silently, his eyes tightly closed, but the red-pupilled black eye in his brow remained vigilant of his surroundings. The black eye, possessing Eye of Secrets, could briefly glimpse future trajectories, making it the safest early warning radar for Lin Chia. Suddenly, a phantom shadow approached from afar and gently collided with Lin Chia's physical body. Moments later, Lin Chia's tightly closed eyes slowly opened. He let out a long breath, weariness appearing in his eyes. Although Great Sage Avatar didn't use his own spiritual power, it was still a huge burden on his detached soul. He chose to take advantage of the chaos to kill just one mystery, and then stop, partly because his soul had reached its limit in maintaining the Great Sage Avatar, and partly because he feared that killing more mysteries would make the act too obvious. Killing the tumbler could be attributed to it attacking first, since his previous 2 strikes could only be considered accidental injuries. But if while fighting Chin Han remained unharmed while he accidentally killed the other 2 mysteries, even with their low intelligence, the other mysteries would likely realize something was wrong. After all, from the beginning, Lin Chia's purpose in transforming into the demon ape had only 2 goals: to help Chin Han out of his predicament and establish his authority. After killing 1 Klein, Lin Chia believed Chin Han could handle the remaining 2 himself, and the demon ape's death at Chin Han's hands invisibly elevated Chin Han's deterrence significantly. It was a perfect rescue. Lin Chia had done all he could, the rest was up to Chin Han. He waved his hand to send the caregivers back to the God's psychiatric hospital, took one last look in Chin Han's direction, and disappeared into the dead silence of Wild Mountain like a shadow of night. Continuous explosions echoed through the city. Xiaopinga looked at where the demon ape had disappeared, his brows slightly furrowed. Suddenly appearing, accidentally killing a Klein, then mysteriously dying at Chin Han's hands? Isn't this resolution a bit too convenient? He muttered. What exactly was that demon ape? He pondered for a long time but couldn't figure it out. Time passed minute by minute, and the battle waves in the distance gradually subsided. After a while longer, atop the tall building, a man wearing a military coat carrying the heads of two mysteries slowly walked to Xiaoping's side. In the end, Qin Han had killed the two Klein-level mysteries. Xiaoping glanced at him, a smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. All the mysteries in the city are in a state of silence. It seems your show of force was successful. Just luck. Qin Han sighed deeply. To be honest, I still don't understand how that demon ape died. It's too strange. The result is good, that's what matters. Xiaoping stood up, patted Qin Han's shoulder and smiled. After so many fierce battles, you must be near your limit, right? Go rest first. Qin Han was startled. What about you? I have to wait for the logistics department to clean up the battlefield before I can wake up the civilians, then I can leave. Xiaoping stretched out his hand, pointing at the devastated Beijing, saying, the headquarters will handle the follow-up cleanup work. Until now, Xiaoping had only opened one eye, keeping the other tightly closed as if asleep. Qin Han nodded slightly. All right. He turned to walk downstairs. Qin Han. Xiaoping suddenly spoke. You did very well. Xiaoping smiled. I feel at ease. Leaving Beijing to you. Qin Han turned back, staring at Xiaoping for a moment. Thank you. Under the logistics department's efforts, the broken streets began to recover at an amazing speed. In less than half an hour, Beijing had returned to its original appearance. People who had sleepwalked to various places for refuge orderly returned to their beds, and the drowsiness lingering in their minds was ebbing away like the tide. The snow clouds gradually dispersed, and as sunlight poured down, this sleeping city began to slowly revive. Damn! How did I sleep for so long? Why didn't the alarm clock go off today? Oh no, I wanted to get up early to buy more New Year's supplies. How did I oversleep? Honey. Wake up quick, we're supposed to go to the countryside today. Why am I in the pig pen? Beijing, which had never slept in, welcomed the winter sun on this New Year's Eve, lazily waking from sweet dreams, bustling about to welcome the new year. No one noticed that the three snowmen who had sat atop the tall building had quietly melted away.